Right, and I'll hand it off to Nate to start the meeting.
Thank you, Charlene. Well, welcome everybody to the Wednesday, July 19th meeting for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Group, Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. I'm chair for the meeting today. My name is Nate Evans. I'm an active transportation planner at the Maryland Department of Transportation. And we're joined this afternoon by Eric Lashinsky, our vice chair. And Charlene, do you want to do a roll call for us, please?
I will do. Okay. First, we have City of Annapolis,
Here, thanks.
Anne Arundel County,
Hi, this is Daniel Allen with Anne Arundel County.
Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County,
Hi, Claire Stewart here for Carroll County.
Hartford County. I believe we have anybody today. Howard County,
Hello, Chrissy Tuff here.
Queen Anne's County, Maryland Department of the Environment,
Present.
Maryland Department of Planning.
Hi, Tina James with Department of Planning.
Thank you. MDOT Maryland Highway Safety Office. We've got MDOT Maryland Transit Administration. MDOT State Highway Administration.
This is Barry listed SHA.
Thank you. MDOT, the Secretary's Office.
Present.
Francine here.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then if we have any guests who would like to introduce themselves, they can do that now at this time. That concludes the roll call then.
Thank you, Charlene. Seem to have a number of absences this afternoon. Just want to make sure we have a quorum to be able to vote on any other things during our meeting today.
I think we have 5 BPAC members. Like, let me check again. 1, 2. We've got 8 members at least at this point, which I believe is enough for a quorum. Regina, let me know if I'm not correct.
You are correct. You're good to go.
Great.
Great.
And
Thank you for the
Baltimore
verification.
County just joined also.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our second agenda item, the approval of the May minutes. Minutes were sent out in advance of the meeting. If anyone had any comments, they could have sent them to Charlene for the committee. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion. Annapolis.
I'll second the motion, Howard County.
Thanks, Chris. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing no comments, all those in favor of adopting the minutes, please say aye.
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 And all those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries, and we've adopted the minutes. So I'll move to our third agenda item, the presentation for right sizing Louisville for safe streets. I'd like to introduce Claire Yates, who's from Louisville, who was successful in getting a Safe Streets for All implementation project, and she's going to tell us about the project. All yours, Claire. Thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Nate and Charlene, for the invitation. Excuse me. So as Nate said, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I am a transportation planner with Louisville Metro's Department of Public Works. We're a merged city-county government. And for the past year, I've worked exclusively as the program manager rather, for Vision Zero Louisville. And so today I'll talk a little bit about Vision Zero, the safe system approach, which undergirds achieving Vision Zero, and the Right Sizing Louisville for Safe Streets SS4A implementation grant. Next slide, please. Thanks. So first of all, what is Vision Zero? Vision Zero is an internationally recognized strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. We were talking before the meeting about how, you know, even if you when you set on this path to reduce and eventually eliminate, to prevent fatal and serious injury crashes, even if you don't achieve your goal along the way, you will likely have done some good. So in Louisville, our goal is to eliminate all traffic fatalities on surface streets by 2050. And in June of last year, our Louisville Metro Council voted unanimously to adopt an ordinance in support of Vision Zero. That was critical in us even applying for a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. That was one of the criteria. So not only did that help us be successful in winning our implementation grant of over $20 million, but it also really kind of helped set the stage for a greater emphasis on transportation safety in Louisville. You know, different cities handle their Vision Zero approach differently based on their own unique needs and transportation systems and what those cities look like and feel like and what their challenges are. And like in most US cities, our Vision Zero goal excludes fatalities that occur on interstates and private property, such as parking lots. And one really kind of bright spot was that the ordinance does require an annual report be published documenting the needs and progress of our Vision Zero initiative. So that's really an opportunity to communicate to both stakeholders, both in the city and at the state level, as well as the general public about what we're doing and what we're not doing and maybe need help on in order to make meaningful progress toward our Vision Zero goal. So next slide, please. So why even have Vision Zero in Louisville, Kentucky? Well, like most US cities, we saw a spike in roadway deaths and serious injuries during the COVID-19 pandemic. I feel like the pandemic really brought out a bad combination of both fewer cars on the road so that the motorists that were driving were able to speed excessively with pretty deadly consequences. In Louisville, we lost 99 people to crashes on surface streets last year. And as you may have heard, nationally across the US, pedestrian deaths have reached their highest level in 40 years. And so we must, we take that as a mandate and act with a sense of urgency to improve public safety for all road users by using a safe system approach. So next slide, please. So to achieve Vision Zero requires the implementation of a safe system approach, which is founded on the principles that humans make mistakes and that human bodies have a limited ability to tolerate crash impacts. So in a safe system, that risk is reduced through layered safety measures I really enjoy the Swiss cheese analogy, a layered Swiss cheese approach, so that when humans invariably make mistakes, whether that's distracted driving, whether that's speeding, whether that's a pedestrian who misgauges how fast a car is going when they cross the street, those inevitable and those incredibly human mistakes should never lead to death. And that's what the safe system approach is all about. You know, we're not trying to eliminate all crashes. We're trying to eliminate the resulting death from those serious crashes. So that includes designing and managing road infrastructure to keep the risk of a mistake low. And when a mistake does lead to a crash, that impact on the human body doesn't result in a fatality or serious injury. And I will share with you that Vision Zero Louisville has started addressing 4 of the 5 pillars of the safe system approach. To be blunt, we have not yet tackled the safer vehicles approach or you know, begun to dip our toe in the water there, just due to the very nature of what that safer vehicles approach represents. I see that as a partnership between Vision Zero cities and states throughout the country, working in partnership with federal agencies like USDOT, NHTSA, FHWA, and the NTSB, among others. So next slide. I really like this slide because these are the 6 safe system principles, you know, sort of the fundamental beliefs that the entire safe system approach is built on. So they are used to develop those safe system approach pillars between roads, speeds, post-crash care, the vehicles themselves, shared responsibility, safer people, really sort of doing that layered approach that I mentioned. And you could even call it, I think it's holistic as well, with that redundancy as well. So next slide. So moving into the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So really quickly, high level, this is a new grant program that was established by the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was passed in late 2021. So as you may be aware, this grant program didn't even exist a couple years ago. And in that bipartisan infrastructure law, there was $5 billion appropriated over 5 years between 2022 and 2026. So we've got this kind of limited window to really seize on that opportunity. You know, so that's why you see a lot of cities and city agencies and state DOTs working with those city agencies and tribal organizations to grab as much federal funding as we can while we can, particularly among Vision Zero communities, because the grant program goal for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant is the prevention of roadway deaths and serious injuries. Now that's what Vision Zero is all about. So this grant is explicitly or custom tailored for Vision Zero cities to really try to move that needle and reduce their numbers of fatal and serious injury crashes. Next slide. So there's 2 types of grants. There's the planning grants that are now called planning and demonstration grants. FHWA is trying to encourage more sort of quick wins out of that planning grant, so that it's not just a document, but it's also something that folks can actually see. So maybe those sort of quote unquote quick win implementation build outs and things like that. Think paint and post or very limited roadway section improvements. But the primary purpose of that first grant is to allow cities and MPOs and tribes to develop or supplement a Vision Zero action plan. And that action plan is critical because that sets the roadmap for what we're going to need to do going forward. And those implementation grants can only be granted out if a city can prove that it has a viable action plan. And those grants primarily fund roadway construction projects with proven safety countermeasures. So think lighting, roundabouts, road diets, or right sizing as we call them here in Louisville. Next slide. So speaking of that action plan, for a 3-year period between 2019 and 2021, Louisville Metro Public Works worked with both our state transportation cabinet, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and a consulting firm with regional reach, Palmer Engineering, to develop the quote unquote Vision Zero Louisville Safety Report. So it doesn't explicitly have the name action plan, and it's formatted a bit differently, but nevertheless, it utilizes both systemic and reactive approaches to assess transportation safety across all of Louisville, not just one corridor. So this is really a really big milestone for Louisville and transportation safety, because historically we've just looked at one corridor, or we look through a comprehensive plan or a large transportation plan looking more at economic development rather than specifically safety, and within that specifically fatal and serious injury crashes. So what is systemic and reactive? What do we mean by that? Well, systemic, we mean roadway geometry. How many lanes does a road have? How wide are those lanes? What's the surrounding land use and density? How fast does that road feel to a motorist? How hostile does that road feel to a pedestrian? If there are no sidewalks and no trees, it's telling a pedestrian, particularly our most vulnerable residents among us, that road is not for you. We did not think of you, and that was not our priority. And I think we've seen a real reckoning nationally over the last few years now about how we treat disadvantaged communities and how we should be designing streets for everyone, complete streets, as opposed to just motorists and for vehicles. So next slide, please. So we were able to use the safety report to qualify for an SS4A implementation grant, but the SS4A grant application will get more stringent over time. The criteria is going to start to, or has already started to include, and will eventually probably demand a high injury network be developed of a city. So we're already working on that and hope to have that finished by the end of the year. And we're also in the very early stages of a Vision Zero action plan. So speaking of MPOs, our MPO won a planning grant for a Vision Zero action plan for the region. as well as an action plan for all 16 of its jurisdictions. So that's, as you can imagine, that's a pretty big undertaking. It'll take a while, but we've begun to chart that path, and we can leverage our Vision Zero Louisville program as it continues to mature, as well as our work in things like the high injury network and previous grant projects as well that all help move the needle in preventing fatal and serious injury crashes. One of the systemic risk factors that was identified in the Safe Streets, in the Vision Zero Louisville Safety Report were 4-lane undivided roadways. Next slide. Now I'll get to why those are a systemic risk factor in a second, but let me first tell you that the safety report identified 22 corridors that were 4-lane undivided roadways for potential right sizing. It excluded 11 corridors due to project overlap. For a couple of these streets, we had already milled and repaved them as a right-sized street, just as part of regular maintenance. And then several are actually parts of much larger long-range capital projects. And so we selected 10 corridors to go after that grant for. And with our $21 million award from the feds, as well as state and local matches, the total cost comes to about $27 million. So a really substantial number to wrap around a redesign for those 10 corridors. And as some of you might already be aware, the USDOT Justice 40 areas have kind of changed a bit since they were first rolled out last year. And at first, we were looking at about 60% of these corridors overlapped with Justice 40 areas. But now 9 of the 10 corridors are in or touch Justice 40 areas. So with those new guidelines that, frankly, I think do a better job than the first iteration or second iteration, I guess, we're really proving how much we're focusing on these quote unquote Justice 40 or environmental areas, which in Louisville, Jefferson County is what we call the West End and the South End, basically west of our Interstate 65 for the most part. Interstate 65 is a north-south corridor that basically bisects most of Louisville. So next slide, please. So getting back to those 4-lane undivided roadways, well, why even have a right sizing or road diet or roadway configuration, whatever you want to call it? Well, the pro for a 4-lane undivided roadway is throughput, right? It's not doing anything very well for motorists, for pedestrians, for cyclists, except for moving cars as quickly as possible through a given area. And so some of the resulting negative impacts of a 4-lane undivided roadway are higher speed, weaving, rear end collisions in interior lanes, because those interior lanes end up becoming the de facto turning lanes. You see, with these 4-lane undivided roadways, we also see quote unquote roadway departure crashes from the exterior lane because of the proximity to utility poles, trees, street lights, all kinds of different things. And there's also the higher pedestrian crash risk as well due to crossing those 4 lanes, as opposed to a 3-lane section where you have 3 travel lanes to cross. And though certainly not encouraged, I think all of us on the call have seen folks crossing the street use a two-way left turn lane, or as we call them, the twiddle, because we love our acronyms. You know, pedestrians can sort of hang out in that zone there. And I wanted to share with you all an example of one of our 4-lane undivided roadways just south of downtown in an industrial area. When I took this picture last year, I saw just a handful of cars and one cyclist. So clearly that road is not working for anyone and encourages those higher speeds. Next slide. But with a 3-lane section, you start getting things like a dedicated left turn lane at intersections, at signalized intersections, which is shown here on the photo. You get that kind of continuous 2-way left turn lane that allows for those safer left turns from the main line, as well as side street turns as well. It reduces, like I mentioned, it reduces that crossing distance for pedestrians, and it typically puts actual speeds closer to the posted speed limit or desired speed or design speed, right? You know, with these 3-lane sections, most of them are on roadways that have a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And we're really hoping that with this reconfiguration, those actual speeds hew a lot closer to that 35-mile-an-hour speed limit that is most appropriate for these types of corridors. Think, you know, collectors, not necessarily major arterials, but are really critical connections in the transportation street network. But of course, there's always trade-offs in any decision that you make. My economist professor would be proud to hear me say that. So one of them is congestion during peak hours. And that's something that comes with a lot of potential for backlash, as well as gutter bike lanes. You know, when you convert a 4-lane section into a 3-lane roadway, you typically have just a few feet of remainder space on each side of the road. And most transportation agencies are encouraged to install bike lanes. And so they see that as an opportunity to paint a bike symbol in the shoulder or in the gutter and count it as a bike lane toward their annual goals. Well, that doesn't really make anyone happy. It doesn't make the cyclists happy. It doesn't make the motorists happy, who typically take their frustration out on the cyclists. And of course, too, with a continuous 2-way left turn lane, without any sort of hardened median or barrier, there is the both potential and realized risk of folks just driving in the turning lane down the road and passing from it as well. So next slide, please. So our grant application, proud to say, was pretty thorough. Not only did we identify 10 corridors throughout Jefferson County where we wanted to implement this type of proven safety countermeasure of a road diet or right sizing, but we even went so far as to draw up kind of preliminary sketches of what that might look like on each individual corridor. And that right sizing or road reconfiguration strategy might look different in different contexts. So I pulled out this page in the grant application because I think it does a good job of showing that, you know, in some sections, we're looking to change that 3-lane section to a 4-lane section into a 3-lane section with a wider sidewalk, or with bike lanes, depending on the width and need. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, well, aren't those bike lanes gutter bike lanes? Yes, those are, and we are working with some advocacy groups here in town to improve that design. So even though we did not do community engagement before the grant application was submitted, we're learning from our mistakes, and we've already had several conversations with our monthly during our monthly Vision Zero Louisville task force, which is really great group that just includes transportation professionals. It includes public health professionals. It includes cycling advocates, first responders, police, EMS. It really just runs the gamut. So we're having ongoing conversations about, here are some potential opportunities to rethink what that road looks like, critically without moving curbs for most of the corridors, as y'all are probably aware. When you start moving curbs and buying right of way, like that opens up a whole new bowl of wax. But you also see here on the right, it's a little hard to see, but we also included a detailed cost summary, and breaking that out intersection by intersection. We included a detailed crash summary as well as critically a benefit cost analysis. That BCA is a requirement of SS4A grants, and I think it really forces you to quantify and that need and that benefit for the project, and it also helps you quantify that why this project is worth doing in the first place. Next slide. Also included in the grant application was a proposed timeline. And so you can see here that we really got in the weeds. We really got specific about each corridor, what the potential timelines could be for each corridor based on those corridors' specific recommendations. So for example, for Southern Parkway, you see that's the second from the bottom. You'll see that has a tighter timeline because the recommended improvements for that corridor are to mill and repave as a 3-lane section and install additional corridor lighting, particularly pedestrian scale lighting. So the timelines sort of meet those individual corridors' needs. And lastly, next slide. And lastly, looking ahead at this implementation grant, we're looking to, in the coming weeks and months, sign our formal grant agreement with FHWA, assign project managers and consultants. Now, since our project is a little unique in that there's 10 corridors bundled into one project, we're going to kind of sub-bundle those corridors where they make sense in different areas. Like, for example, there are 2 corridors that are actually on the same street, just very different sections of that road. So we'll be bundling those together. And as I mentioned, continually refining these designs with input from area residents. I personally am a big proponent of letting the data guide you in what is the most appropriate safety improvement and where the biggest need is, but then sharing that information with residents and asking, does this work for you? Is this something that you think would work for you. So last slide is my contact information. So please don't hesitate to reach out about this implementation grant, as well as a new grant application, SS4 grant application we just submitted for a two-way conversion of a couple of streets in the heart of one of our most historic neighborhoods in the entire city, that connects downtown and our University of Louisville campus. And please check out visionzerolouisville.org for more information on both this SS4A grant in Louisville, as well as other projects and initiatives that we're working on as well. With that, that's the end of my presentation, but I would love to hear from you all if we have a second check-in thing. What has been your all's experience around right sizings? Are there a lot done in the Baltimore area? Does the public generally seem receptive to them? Do some neighborhoods or parts of town seem more receptive to them than others? And I'll mute now.
I know the state has had success in right-sizing roads through road diets. There's been a particularly successful one outside of DC, not necessarily in the Baltimore region, but put in protected bike lanes on an outside lane that was once a through travel lane for cars, and that's definitely improved safety and increased bicycle traffic in that area.
Which street is that?
That is Maryland 187, Old Georgetown Road in Bethesda.
I can add one also. This is Chris Eatoff. I'm with Howard County in Maryland. We recently did a road diet, complete streets project on a road called Oakland Mills Road. Fairly standard by road diets, a 4-to-3 conversion. We added protected bike lanes with flex posts as the separators. We added a bunch of pedestrian refuge islands in the center lane to add more pedestrian crossings, and was very successful, especially in reducing speeds. Speeds were really high previously on the 4-lane section, and we did a good job. We're doing some speed study now to get the after speeds, but it is definitely much slower. And community wise, we did a lot of community outreach that went well. We got a little bit of pushback during construction, just because people hadn't been paying attention and they were a little shocked to see the changes to the roadway. But once explained and once the project was finished and they saw the end result, the feedback has been really good from the community as well. So we consider it very successful.
Has anyone done a 4-to-2 and nixed that 2-way left turn lane? There's been some high-level discussions around possibly doing that as well, to allow for those protected bike lanes. Chris, how'd you all fit that in? Was that a 40-foot curb to curb?
It was a little bit more. It was still more like 45, 44, 45.
Okay. Yep.
So our bike lane is actually, it's a 2-directional bike lane on one side of the road. It fit a little better that way for us. So it's about a 10-foot bike lane area with a 3-foot buffer.
Yeah.
And then the 3 travel lanes.
Yeah, we have there is opposition among some of our designers to a 2-way cycle track on a 2-way street.
Yeah, there are some challenges. I mean, we had we're concerned obviously about the turning movements and the cyclists going in the contraflow direction. They are maybe a little bit in a less expected situation sometimes, but we did some extra signage, and it seems to be going okay. But yeah, we we don't necessarily love the two directional. We'll probably prefer to have the bike lanes on either side of the road in each direction with
Yeah.
a buffer and a protection on each side, but it just didn't fit that way. So
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I saw Patrick, you had your hand up.
Yes, you did. I'm trying to multitask here. So I am new, so I won't act like I know everything about the project. But let me make sure that my video is actually on.
It is.
It is? Okay.
Mhm.
I am beautiful. Is that what you're saying? Okay, cool. So before me, we had a very active staff member here, our former Complete Streets manager. He was over a project on Central Avenue. Previously, that project, and that's Central Avenue here in Baltimore. So Central Avenue was originally a 5-lane street. And Nate, correct me because I just started too. I believe a 5-lane street, but then we changed it to a 3-lane road diet that included a center turning lane, a 2-way separated bike lane, and there's some mid-block crossings. Like, it's a really extensive road diet. And it's my understanding that that was done before the this whole program came about. And so one challenge that the city of Baltimore DOT came into conflict with was the FHWA didn't consider our Complete Streets ordinance in manual as a recommended guideline to do that sort of application on that roadway. But thanks to our previous Complete Streets manager and his team of folks that he was managing, they were able to put together a lot of great data that really justified the work that was being done and the benefits that would be created from this sort of project. So I'm still getting up to speed on it. But it's a really popular facility or road, complete street in Baltimore. And yeah, so.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll check that one out too.
Hey.
Hey, this is Tanya. I have my hand raised. I'm with Anne Arundel County Office of Transportation.
It's clear
Bike
on mute.
Yep. I was. Sorry.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Yep, sorry.
Okay, here I can start my video, I guess.
Oh,
So
mine.
I just wanted to say that it's been kind of a mixed bag in Anne Arundel County in terms of getting right sizing or road diets or however we want to call it done. I would say that on sort of the low volume roads with vehicular volume being low, it's been easy enough to do both on state and local roads. But when it comes to roads like the one I work off of, that's 4-lane and misery for cyclists, but it's high volume for cars. And there's just a huge resistance from the traffic engineering side of things to put in these road diets. And I would, Eric Lashinsky, who's also on this call, I would love to see a road diet on Maryland 450 West Street. But boy, I don't think we would ever be able to get SHA to agree to that because that's one of their roads that they control. So I don't know how you deal with that challenge, but I'd be interested to hear if you have any tips.
I agree. That's the section of Maryland 450 that's really important for Annapolis that we would love to see a road diet on. Is just the last few blocks of it before it crosses into Anne Arundel County, so near Maryland Route 2. But that's where we have a major trail project, and at some point something has to change there because it's a major gateway into our city, and I think there's some new development that's going to happen along there. And so I think that might be part of the equation ultimately, but.
Do you have any other questions for Claire? Okay, Claire, thanks for joining us today and sharing about your experience. We appreciate it.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you all so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it. And I'm going to stick around to listen for Tampa.
Sounds good.
Nate, you're muted.
You are muted, yeah.
Yep, there I go. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Claire. And so next up, we'll have Kelly Fearon from Tampa talk about the systematic application for equity project.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, my name's Kelly Fearon. I'm with the City of Tampa. I actually grew up in the Maryland area, so some of these roads are very familiar sounding. So it's nice to hear all the great work that you guys are doing. I'll just do a brief presentation on our application for Safe Streets for All. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Great. So Claire already kind of touched on a lot of the really important things that is coming out of the Safe Streets for All federal grant application. We were really excited to see it and to see kind of the requirements and the type of projects that are being encouraged, especially developing action plans and conducting demonstrational activities in this round of the grant. When we applied and won last year an implementation grant, our specific goal was to carry out the projects and strategies identified in an action plan, so specifically our Vision Zero action plan. Next slide. So really for us, what started kind of our whole grant application was work that we had done previously to kind of get us in a place to have like good planning foundations to start this. We finished in 2021 our Vision Zero action plan. It's really a data-driven approach, kind of identifying where are hotspots, where do we have different systemic issues, and then identifying the policies, programs, and responsibilities to address these and metrics so that we can track and kind of monitor how we're doing year to year. Next slide. Claire kind of touched on this, but our grant application itself specifically went through the safe systems approach to make sure that, the projects that are selected and that were identified follow all of these, the safer streets, speeds, and people, specifically focused on safer speeds and kind of the countermeasures that we can do to get to Vision Zero. So our action plan had already spelled out kind of the types of things that we want to pursue. And I think that was so important for us, was that by having that upfront planning opportunity, we received some funding through our department, but it was really a priority of the mayor when she took office. That's really set us up in a good place to now be able to actually implement projects. Next slide. Overall, in the city of Tampa, we unfortunately are often rated in the top 10 most dangerous areas to walk and bike nationally. We have a kind of similar story to a lot of other Sunbelt cities. We were developed after the redeveloped after the automobile. We used to be kind of a streetcar centric city, and then just roadways have been widened, a lot of priorities on higher speed arterials. And so just in general and nationally, Tampa streets are very unsafe. 44 people are killed on average every year. 2 years ago, that number was 91. So really was trending even more in the wrong direction. So that's why we are really excited to have been awarded this grant to implement some projects that are really desperately needed. Next slide. This is just a timeline of our overall city kind of Vision Zero efforts. So when Mayor Castor took office in 2019, this was one of her stated goals. She formed advisory committees for 5 different focus areas, and one of those was transportation. And it's been really an important part of her administration ever since. In 2020, she hired the first ever Vision Zero coordinator for the city. And just kind of through that, the Vision Zero coordinator has been in charge of creating this action plan, leading the task force, and just working with other departments to follow the policies and programs that are outlined in the report. Since 2020, we've also kind of done a lot of internal reorganizations, and we've expanded our team from just that one Vision Zero coordinator to about 8 people. We kind of had taken some resources and realigned them to be more focused on just Vision Zero and rapid safety projects. So it's been a really great shift, and we've seen some really good results so far. Next slide. Our grant application, we were awarded $25 million for projects. So that includes our $5 million match and then $20 million federally. And our application is focused on our high injury network, especially our high injury network within Justice 40 areas. So you can see at this map here, but in Tampa, about 1/4 of the lane miles account for almost 3/4 of the fatalities. So, you know, that was something the grant kind of hinted at, to really have a high injury network. And we were fortunate that we had done our Vision Zero action plan and were able to kind of take that data-driven approach and apply it. Next slide. So we named our grant application T-Safe, but Tampa Systemic Applications for Equity. We broke our projects into 3 buckets, really focusing on the high injury network, which we called triage projects. And then we also had requested funding for preventative care. So our safe routes to school, safe routes to parks, focusing on our transit stops and doing small projects, small sidewalks, mid-block crossings, those type of improvements that were needed. And we also are, as part of this, going to do a comprehensive pedestrian safety and equity action plan. So that's a good chance for us to kind of understand further how we can improve the pedestrian safety that's so needed. 74% of our funding from this grant is going to be spent on underserved communities, so those areas that were identified as disadvantaged in the Justice 40 initiative. Next slide. This is a map here that shows where we're going to be spending our funding. So those high injury networks or triage projects, we're going to be tackling first, and really going to be doing, small improvements, adding more mid-block crossings. We're going to be adding separated bike lanes, just things that we can do really immediately because of the grant timeline too. We're not moving any curb or any major reconstruction. And then we also have identified in a lighter blue our safe routes to places projects. Next slide. We also had been partnering with the Transportation Planning Organization. They had done 2 separate studies with the city, focused specifically on safe routes to schools and safe access to parks. So the improvements that they identified in these reports were very specific, and those were what we also applied under that safe routes to places name for grant funding. So those lighter blue lines on our map, those were specific projects that were costed and done through the work with the Transportation Planning Organization. Next slide. Overall, the focus of our grant is going to be doing quick build projects. So, what can we do with pavement markings, signage, adding crosswalks, trying to slow speeds down. And this is a list of some of the safety countermeasures specifically called out in our application. Next slide. I'll just touch really briefly. We've started in the past year and a half a quick build program. So in the past, we've done more of kind of a traditional capital improvement program, but due to our very, very limited resources that I'm sure everyone can understand in different ways. You know, it's harder to do more with less between rising construction prices and just overall reduced funds that we have every year from the gas tax. We're really pivoting to putting things in place now and putting things in place through our resurfacing program. So next slide. Our very first quick build project went into the ground in January. This is what we're defining as a quick build program, and we're still kind of refining you know, our budget that will go into this program, but our intention is to deliver the Safe Streets for All projects through kind of a similar mechanism, using in-house resources as much as we can, and then doing design build. Next slide. So this is a picture of our very first quick build, just to give you an example of kind of what we're hoping to leverage these funds for. This was our existing Cash Street Bridge just north of here. There's a two-way cycle track that picks up past the university. There's at least 1,000 students walking back and forth every day over here. And then south of this bridge, the cycle track picks up again. But this has always been a gap that we had identified and hoped to one day fund, but it had been part of a larger reconstruction of the bridge. That project is not funded. It's a much larger project, but we were able to complete this gap using our quick build method. So next slide. This is a rendering of our design. So you can see that we took away a vehicular lane and added a two-way cycle track. Next slide. And this is the final construction. We partnered with our downtown partnership. They hired an artist to do kind of a mural. The two corners are two ends of our downtown Riverwalk, so it's extremely busy. People walking and biking through here at all times of the day. So it's really brought a lot of sense of place and some really nice artwork to this crossing. You can see here how wide our cycle track is, and we found this project to be really, really successful, and it fills a much needed gap. So this is what we are hoping to roll out throughout the rest of the quarters where we can. Next slide. Next steps for us is, as Claire also mentioned, getting our final grant agreement and then moving into kind of planning and final project development, doing public outreach, and then implementing our projects. Next slide. And then this is my contact information if you have any questions.
Very much, Kelly. Do we have any questions for Kelly today?
I have a question. This is Tanya Asman again with Anne Arundel County. The last slide that you showed with the multicolored paintings on the intersection, is that something you got funded with the grant, or you hope to get funded with the grant?
So the artwork was funded by our downtown partnership. So like kind of like a business association of our downtown, and they funded that piece.
Okay.
Separately.
The reason I ask is because, I was at the APA conference earlier this year, and I saw that as a quick build option sometimes for painting bulb outs instead of actually constructing them. And I thought it was a great idea, but when I came back and started to bring it to my traffic engineers again, it was like, that's not MUTCD at all. So, how did you get around that?
We have painted bulb outs. I think sometimes you find different interpretations of the MUTCD. We haven't found a problem with it. We make sure we don't include any words. We try to be really careful about what colors we use, but our traffic operations group is very on board with the intention behind it.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Hey, Tanya, can I ask you a question in regards to what you were asking?
Sure. Sorry, I muted myself.
So Baltimore City is able to do different corner bump outs. But I think the way that we're able to get it done is that we don't, I guess, color in the center of the intersection. We only do the the actual bump out area that would normally be protection around flex posts. I could show you, I can give you more information about that and put you in contact with the planner who's over that. That's under our placemaking program.
Sure, yeah, I would welcome any contacts that I can maybe arrange a meeting with our people to say, here's some examples of where it's working. So yeah, and same for you, Kelly, if you have people I can be put in touch with, that would be great.
Any other questions for Kelly? Thanks for joining us today. Feel free to stick around for the rest of our meeting. And next on our agenda, Charlene's going to talk about future topic areas for BPAC.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to thank our guest speakers today for joining us. And we really appreciate the insight you gave us about the Safe Streets for All implementation projects that you guys got awarded. So one thing, we've gone through a lot of different topics since I've been at BMC, but I wanted to see, kind of get the pulse and see what you guys were interested in hearing more about, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, or IIJA. There's a lot of money available, and getting prepared and putting in good applications was something that had been identified. So looking at Safe Streets for All implementation grants. We had also heard that maybe looking at reconnecting communities, successful applications from that. People might be interested in having outside speakers come talk about those elements. We have also heard had some discussion about the hardening of quick build projects. So taking those flex posts and then converting them to the concrete curbs and different things like that. And what programs, how people are handling those programs. And those are some of the elements that we've heard that people want to hear more about, but I'd love to make sure that we're, presenting things and focusing these BPAC meetings on elements that are going to be useful for you all. So we just wanted to open this up, and if people have suggestions of things they want to learn more about, this is just a casual discussion. So go ahead, anybody who had any thoughts, that would be great.
As most of you know, we're working through the state update to the bicycle pedestrian master plan. So I will certainly be coming back in either the fall or early winter to talk about and as it's been adapted, or maybe if in for the fall. Do it then, that'd be a good time to incorporate into comments.
Great. I know Eric had mentioned when we chatted, maybe having a report out about the projects that were awarded funds for the Transportation Land Use Connection Program through the UPWP project. So we've got City of Annapolis and Baltimore City, who both are currently doing projects under that program. So we'll plan on highlighting those.
Did you need me to speak on that project at all, Charlene?
Potentially, yeah. When we figure out when that'll be, we'll definitely reach out and see if you're able to speak on that, Patrick.
Okay, I can give you a status update of where we are now.
Yeah, that'd be nice to get a quick update if it's just like a minute or so.
Okay, cool. Yeah, a minute I can do. I won't talk long. So we are at 15% design. It's going to be a separated cycle track. We are having challenges as Howard County is with getting across larger intersections, multi-lane intersections, but ultimately it's looking pretty good. We're going to have another public meeting in the Wabash Avenue corridor in late August. So I'll actually drop in the Streets of Baltimore webpage. So if anybody wants to subscribe to that project and just kind of stay up to date, just sign up, and hope to see you in the future.
Thank you, Patrick.
Darlene, this is Tanya. I'm sure I could think of something, but not off the top of my head. I might need a little more time.
No,
to
totally.
Think
This
about
will be
it.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just saw, I said, I see you have a member survey coming out, so maybe I'll be able to formulate something with that.
Yeah, we're putting you on the spot. So we figured if something's been on your mind, we can speak to it today. And if not, we'll follow up with the survey to get your thoughts after this as well. And you're always welcome to email me with any ideas, especially if you guys have projects that you want to highlight that you've been working on. We're always looking for great presentations and speakers.
I guess one piece we're thinking about a little bit internally is sort of what are the barriers to and what are the best ways to deal with the barriers to improving pedestrian accessibility around transit stops. Obviously, in a lot of projects, sort of getting commitment to own and maintain new sidewalks is a barrier to getting those, particularly on state roads. But I think as M.MTA is doing more research looking at what is the ADA compliance at and around of our bus stops, trying to figure out how we better partner with local jurisdictions and is it better funding sources or what are the different things that would allow for more effective improvements of sidewalks and accessibility around bus stops and transit locations.
Great, we made note of that. Thank you. Yeah, that first mile, last mile connection is definitely very important and something that we want to push for the region. We'll leave it at that. I want to keep us going on time and we'll follow up with the survey. So if you have any additional ideas, let me know. Even if attendees who aren't official BPEG members have ideas, feel free to email me and I will drop my email in the chat so you have that. There you go. Thank you. We can move on to the next item if that works.
I'm going to just continue with the Bike to Work Week update, Charlie.
Doing two in a row. I'm filling in for Shane. He unfortunately wasn't able to help us today, but he's done a really great job leading the Bike to Work Week program for this year, working with our active transportation working group, which includes a lot of rideshare coordinators from around the region. We've got state representatives as well on that group. So we just want to report out today and let you guys know about this year's Bike to Work Week, which was held the third week of May. So here's some images from the event. We luckily had great weather most of the week and especially on Bike to Work Day. Our registration was about the same as it was last year, which is good. We didn't see increases like we hoped, but we're hoping we'll be able to see that in the future. As you can see, we had higher numbers previously in 2007 and it dipped with the pandemic and us having to pivot to being virtual. So last year was our first year in person. This was our second year. We had great numbers all around for all the jurisdictions. We had 16 local events throughout the region, which is a little more than last year. There are 8 in Baltimore City, 3 in Baltimore County, 2 in Harford County, and 1 each in Anne Arundel, Carroll, and Howard counties. And those included primarily Bike to Work Day celebrations that were held the Friday of that week. There were 27 pickup locations throughout the region, which is 2 more than last year. So these pickup locations were open all week and we partnered with bike shops as these pickup locations. We had at least two new join us and they're located throughout the region. We also had 14 event sponsors, which we just want to say thank you to our sponsors. We couldn't do it without you all. We had great participation throughout the region and just want to say thank you so much. We also partnered with BAL TV again this year. And we were able to have ads placed on the WBAL website and also on what other websites using some of their digital ad programming that they have. So that resulted in over 760,000 impressions throughout the campaign. And these are some examples of the website banners that were available. And I think they had a kind of active graphic component where the wheels would move. One thing that's continued from last year, we still have a higher percentage of people who are first-time participants. So that's nice to see. So we had 30% of the registrants were first-timers. And you can see on that chart, we tend to have, high levels with the first, second, and third year, but then it spikes back up with the 10-year plus people are very dedicated folks. So our goal is to continue to have those first timers keep joining the event and then inviting their family and friends to join as well. Another element, so when people register, we ask them questions about their commute length and different elements so we can kind of get at different behaviors. And one thing we wanted to look at were trips that were 0 to 5 mile commutes, which typically is considered in the bikeable range for a one-way commute. There's a good amount of people who are bicycling with that amount or walking. We had a good number of work from home folks, some public transit users, not as many rideshare users, but we had a fair amount of drive alone people within a commute with 0 to 5 miles. And that's something we want to keep an eye on because that's a potential crowd to hopefully kind of convert or get open to at least taking one trip a week and making it a non motor vehicle trip and potentially making it a bike trip or transit trip. We also did a follow-up survey of the participants after the event to see how Bike to Work Week affected their habits. So 71% of respondents said they replaced at least one car trip with a bike trip during Bike to Work Week. 96% of respondents took at least one bike ride during Bike to Work Week, which is great. And we had a 8% taking 10 or more bike trips, so those heavy users. We also asked them about their barriers to biking. So the respondents primarily said there weren't comfortable bike lanes or paths for them to bike to work on. They felt unsafe biking to work because of aggressive drivers and the poor weather, such as rain and snow. So this gets at some of our work to try to increase the level of comfort in creating a network that's comfortable for people to bike on. So that is all I have to present for Bike to Work Week. And here's Shane's contact information if you want to follow up with him or me if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Charlene. Does anyone have any questions for Charlene on the Bike to Work Week? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item for our roundtable discussion. This will just be an opportunity for members to give an update on any of the projects that have relevant to our discussions today. So we'll start with the City of Annapolis.
All right, thank you, Nate. We're just continuing to work on our major corridor projects that's our West-East Express, where we have 2 federal grants and a state grant ongoing. There's a lot of progress there, but it's a pretty big project. We're essentially in 30% design or beyond 30% design along that corridor. Our College Creek connector is the other big one, and we're about to kick off the next phase of that, which will be the 30% design on that. And that's a state-funded project through the Kim Lamphere Bikeways Network. We have our draft comprehensive plan out for a 90-day public review, and there's a lot of material in our transportation chapter related to bike ped improvements in the city. I would say that our transportation policy in that document is very substantial and is really trying to change the whole development pattern along our major arterials, which is still, primarily suburban and auto oriented. So that's a big emphasis in that comprehensive plan. I just spend a lot of time talking about that. And then we have our BMC Transportation and Land Use Connections grant is wrapping up. So this is the same program that Patrick was talking about before. The one here in Annapolis, we have two pieces of it. One is this this design guidance technical memo, which is kind of like intended to be an appendix to our 2011 bike master plan. And it basically gives us some standards for how and where to do bike facility improvements, kind of help mitigate some of the debates that happen every time we try to do an improvement, and inevitably disagreements ensue about what's appropriate and what's not. So we have a draft of that. We're going to be presenting it to our planning commission and city council transportation committee in the next month or two. And then we did a feasibility study of a corridor stretching from downtown Annapolis to Quiet Waters Park based on this guidance. And that's been wrapped up as well, just kind of reviewing the final versions of that. But I think that's pretty much it. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Aaron. Anne Arundel County.
Sorry, my mute button wasn't working. Unfortunately, I keep forgetting that Dawn doesn't come to these meetings. Dawn Thomas, she's retired from the county now. So I don't have an update on trails, but I do know that there's a public meeting coming up for the Broadneck Trail Phase 5 and 1B. But I'm not sure exactly when that is, but it's coming up very soon. I can certainly send it to Charlene for the minutes. We also do have a public meeting this Thursday for the BWI Trail Spur project for connection to the Nursery Road light rail from Maple Avenue. So we're anticipating potential questions and contention from the public as it relates to this project relating to what we're no longer calling the Baybrook Connector. We're calling it the Bell Grove Safety Improvement Project moving forward. But yeah, that's this Thursday at 6:30 at the Brooklyn Park Brooklyn Park Library. We have our Safe Routes to School accessibility studies are starting to wrap up. There were 17 altogether, so we've been kind of reviewing them in chunks, and we got the last set due at the end of the month. And then we hope to begin the safety training piece of that in the fall at the elementary schools that were selected. As far as like our legislation initiatives, we're still working on our APF, trying to get the multimodal aspects ironed out. It's slow moving, but it's moving. And we still need to also, there's several more. There's the frontage improvements that for developers that we're trying to get pushed through. And then we still have to do complete streets. And we also want to look at our scenic and historic roads criteria. So, but again, those are all kind of out of our control anymore. They're kind of handled by the Office of Planning and Zoning. So we're just pushing as much as we can. And I can't think of anything else. So that's it.
That is Baltimore City.
Howdy, everyone. Yes, there's always something here in Baltimore City. So first, actually, I was trying to run around our office and find our Towards Zero manager, but she is not here, so obviously she has a conflict. But what she wanted me to actually promote is our towards zero, or it's not towards zero. I'm sorry. How do you know I'm the lead bike planner? Because I don't know other people's projects. Let's see. This is actually big. Definitely mention our $10 million Safe Streets for All application. And so what she did was she sent me part of, or the entire application. So what I'm actually going to do is read her words, or the words that I'm sure she wrote for her director, so that I'm not misrepresenting, geez, what we're doing. So the SF4A grant for 3 projects will work symbiotically to advance safety and safety culture in Baltimore City by piloting new methods of engagement. The projects are: 1, a Complete Streets pop-up and quick build program. Previously, DOT received a Safe Streets for All grant to prepare a Vision Zero action plan. That action plan is expected to use a data-driven metrics to identify and prioritize the high injury network. The requested demonstration grant funds will be used to implement 10 to 15 miles of pop-up safety projects on the high injury network, which will be transitioned to quick build infrastructure. They'll include periods of observation, engagement, and iteration. The second project will be a Complete Streets communications campaign. That is something that we actually struggle with a lot of our projects. But essentially it would be a proposed campaign would build off of that action plan and focus on groups to create innovative messaging through different forms of media and create education materials for non-digital residents. And also we actually hope to renovate this, I guess it's called Safety City. It's like this park, like, see Nate's smiling because he knows it's cool. So Safety City is like this thing, this place that has been around for like 30 or 40 years, and Baltimoreans have literally grown up and learned how to become better drivers and users of the streets and things like that. But unfortunately, over the past decade or something like that, it has fallen into underuse. And we're hoping to use some of those funds to revitalize and re-engage the public with that amazing facility. In fact, we have new bikes and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. And the third thing is the Baltimore Greenway Network Cyclovia. This is going to be a pop-up or proposed pop-up street and lane closures once a month along the Baltimore Greenway Trail Network, which is our proposed 35-mile loop trail that will connect most of Baltimore City's major parks through one continuous trail. The Cyclovia would create opportunity to test segments of the trail prior to permanent installation and provide a more joyful and direct means of engaging residents about the project. So that's really exciting, especially seeing as we have submitted a application for a Kim Lamphere network program grant for our Boston Street segment of the Greenway, as well as we currently have a grant for the Middle Branch segment of the Baltimore Greenway. So a lot of exciting stuff. I'm not even going to talk about the bike stuff because I've already taken up more time than I guess I should have. So everyone, thank you. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.
Patrick, feel free to drop any of the extra stuff you didn't talk about in the chat, or you can send it to me to include in the as well.
You flatter me. Thank you. I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Baltimore County.
Hi, everyone. Jessie Bialik from Baltimore County. I wanted to start off by saying that we have a new section here in DPW&T that is focusing on traffic safety. So we now have a traffic safety program manager on board, and we're going to start building out a little unit there. One of their major tasks really, is to do a Vision Zero plan for Baltimore County. So we're going to be gearing up to do that, and I'll be plugged in with that from time to time. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we're pretty excited about that. I also just wanted to say I concur with Tanya that we should go see the Safety City once it's completed and renovated. Baltimore County has been talking about doing something similar, so I'm sure there'll be some other folks here that would love to go and see that. The other things that have been going on in Baltimore County are we did apply for Safe Streets for All grant for some intersection improvements using some of the new intersection technology like the flashing, as well as using the flashing stop signs at some of our more dangerous intersections to see if we can help with some crashes there. We are also going to be doing a complete street pilot program. We have a consultant on board to get started with that shortly. We're also going to be putting in our first ever protected bike lane in Baltimore County over in Pikesville on Green Summit Road in Old Pimlico. So we're very excited about that. We're also going to be putting in some bike lanes down in the Dundalk area to connect a few of the parks down there. And what we've been trying to do as a transportation group is kind of focus on different areas of the county and see where we can improve our connectivity using our bike lanes and using our group from engineering and construction, because they're the ones that do our sidewalks, to see if we can help make these connections a little bit better for folks. So a lot of exciting stuff going on here in Baltimore County, but and then of course our trail projects, but that's all I want to get into at the moment. So thanks.
Carroll County?
Hi, this is Claire with Carroll County Planning. Just to touch on our Safe Routes to School projects, we have Johnsville Road. SHA is performing the audit, which should be finalized probably in the fall of this year, and then we can close that project out. And then the other project, Washington Road, we're finalizing design for that, and that should be moving to the construction phase soon. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Do we have anyone from Hartford County? I don't believe we do. Now we'll move on to Howard. Chris?
Hi, Chris Etoff here, Howard County. We are working on quite a few bike lane segments through resurfacing this summer. We have 5 different segments that are currently being repaved and remarked with bike lanes. So that's kept us quite active. And then we're working on the next round of projects, which will be for more or less next summer resurfacing. We do a public meeting in advance of any segments that we're converting to bike lanes. So we'll be working on that public meeting for late August for the next round of resurfacing segments. It looks like we have about 5 or 6 segments again for next summer. We are also been supporting our school system on some school zone improvements, school walk zone improvements. The Howard County Public School System made a very substantial expansions in their walk zones for the upcoming school year, mostly based on distance, because they increased distance that kids can walk to school before they become eligible for bus transportation. So there's quite a lot of kind of small short-term improvements that are being done to support that, such as crosswalk markings, bike lane markings, signage, not really big capital projects, but small touch-ups that can be help support safety for walk to school with all the new kids that are walking to school in Howard County. And then more on our complete streets policy and implementation side. Our next round is going to start soon. Our next task for that, which is to update our developer regulations in Howard County with regards to complete streets. So that's going to be a major effort that will probably take some time, but it is going to kick off soon with a new implementation team that will oversee that effort. And then we have one project that I did want to mention. It's an ongoing project. We call it North Laurel Connections. And the main reason I wanted to bring it up is it's part of this project goes across a BG&E right of way. And It seems like in our conversations with BG&E, they have recently become much more strict on what they're going to allow in terms of pathways across their right-of-ways. We have many pathways in Howard County, mostly Columbia Association pathways that already cross BG&E right-of-ways, dozens of them, if not more than that. But they recently seemed very firm on some specifications such as no asphalt at all over their right-of-ways, which I just flagging that because I know that's going to probably affect lots of potential projects throughout the region. So it's something I think will need greater conversation and just something that we should all be aware of as we plan our projects and we are coordinating with BG&E. That's what I have for my update.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Do you have anyone from Queen Anne's County representing today? Move down to the Maryland Department of the Environment.
Hi, everyone. I don't think I have any updates related to BPAG today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Maryland Department of Planning.
No updates from planning.
Have anyone from Maryland Highway Safety Office? Okay, we'll move to MDOT-MTA.
Okay, I think the biggest news to talk about is that we won, MDOT-MTA won a raise grant for the Mandamin Metro Station and bus transfer location. It's a $20 million grant, and a portion of that is going to include bicycle and pedestrian investments in the immediate vicinity around the station. And so there's a lot of work to figure out exactly what that's going to include, but I think most of that is going to be very focused on sort of the intersections immediately adjacent to the station and sort of the bike ped connection from Druid Hill Park over to the station. Other than that, we're continuing to work on things we've talked about in the past. Our plans to add bike racks to 29 of our locations around the state. Our design of the Patapsco Avenue Ped Bike Bridge, phase 1 that was, I think we presented about last month here. And then also we're still committed to continuing to expand the number of marked bike cars we have. We're still trying to figure out exactly how many of those that we're going to be able to add, but definitely adding capacity on marked trains for bike service. I think those are probably the most useful things to present on.
Thank you, Patrick. Maryland State Highway Administration. Looks like Mary is on with us. So MDOT Secretary's Office, I'll present for that. We are in the midst of reviewing our FY24 bikeways applications. Actually had our review meeting this morning. So we will make the board announcements later on in the fall, September, October, along with transportation alternatives and our trails projects. Next Friday, July 28th, we have our Maryland Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. This meeting is going to be a hybrid in person at Kinder Farm Park in Anne Arundel County. And we're still working on our bike ped master plan for the state. We're refining our recommendations for the plan over the next couple of weeks, and the draft plan will go to the secretary and to the governor's office for review, and we'll have it available for comment later on in the fall. Francine, anything I'm missing that you want to hit on the pedestrian side of things?
You got it. That's great. We're working on October, and we've secured our speakers and looking forward to making a more robust presentation to everyone next meeting. Thank you.
Francine, since we have two guests today, could you just quickly describe Walktober? Because I think that's, I'm not sure if other states do it, and it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yes, we dedicate the month of October to focus on pedestrians. We have 4 walk-in-ours, which are webinars. We coined the term walk-in-our that focus on various aspects of pedestrians. And the first walk-in-R is a national perspective, generally. And then we have the 3 other walk-in-Rs, which focus on infrastructure, safety, equity, and health. We invite speakers from around the country, many authors, and this year we will have several authors who will be speaking as well. One of the sessions we focus on specifically Maryland initiatives. We try to go around the state and highlight various counties and their pedestrian initiatives. The focus, of course, is very strong towards safety and equity. In addition to that, we have a website, which I invite our guest speakers to check out. So all the walk-in-Rs are taped, recorded, and we have a resource page. Registration is free to the walk-in-Rs. It goes out, the invitation goes out to, I believe last year, it was some 20,000 people throughout the state. Of course, we ask that it resonates. Each organization resonates it. We have 50, generally around 50 partners throughout the state, which are government agencies as well as nonprofits, as well as corporations that partner with us. And the partnership is a way of, again, resonating it throughout the state, because our audience is not just for planners, but it's for the general population as well, the legislative community as well. And for those who are planners, however, they do get credit for attending in person. So the state of Maryland official exercise is walking. So the very first Wednesday of every October, and this will be the 9th Walk Maryland Day. So that generally kicks off the whole month of Walktober and its focus. And we encourage our partners to schedule registered walks throughout the month of October. Of course, we hope that people will continue to do it far beyond that. But we do put those registered walks online so people can find a walk near them and participate. That's kind of an overview. Did I miss anything? Well, I'm very excited about it, and I hope that for those of you who have not replied yet to my partnership email, please do. We are in the throes of working on our website, our copy, and we have secured our speakers now. So we're on that threshold of pushing it out the end of August. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Last on our list for updates is BMC.
Nate, I forgot to add, I'm sure Tanya will appreciate this, but the City of Annapolis did submit a Safe Streets for All application for Forest Drive, where Anne Arundel County had been doing a safety study over the last year. So I forget the exact amount, it was like in the $1 million range. And it's basically to implement all of the recommended improvements over BCA ratio of 1.0, and it's basically quick build type of improvements. But we're also going to be using some of the money for a Vision Zero playbook for Annapolis that will kind of build on the county's Vision Zero manual and work on the design of extending our Forest Drive shared use path all the way down the rest of the corridor. So pretty psyched about that. But yeah, more awesome collaboration between Annapolis and Anne Arundel.
Yay.
Yeah, that's awesome, Eric. Thank you.
That's great to hear. For VMC's updates, we're continuing to work with Baltimore County on the preliminary design for the Patapsco Regional Greenway segment extending from the Guinness Open Gate Brewery to Southwest Area Park. We are also continuing with the transportation land use connection projects with Annapolis and Baltimore City. And one of the big projects that we've talked to basically all of you about is the update to the regional bicycle facility inventory. We're getting close to wrapping that up. I think we just have a little bit more to go. And then we'll be able to distribute that to you all and then work with Nate and the state to get that potentially integrated in a way with the linear referencing system. We're trying to prepare for the vision for the regional bicycle network project, which we hope to be launching either later this year or early next year, but likely later this year is the big push. So we'll have updates about that probably by the next BPAC meeting or before. We'll also be following up with the survey about topics that you guys want to have for future BPAC meetings. So let me know if you have ideas. And then we also will be following up with you all with information about the fall regional bike ped counts program and how to submit locations that you'd like to have considered to have counts done in the fall of this year. So that's all our updates.
If I can tag on to Charlene for BMC for a minute, we just concluded the comment period for the region's long-range transportation plan, TIP, and conformity document. And the software, the platform we use for public engagement is called Public Input. We received hundreds of comments through that software, and it characterizes comments as positive sentiment or negative sentiment. And I will say, roundly, there was negative sentiment for highway widenings and definitely positive sentiment for transit and bike ped, considerable. And some of you may know, while staff will write some of those responses, we do share those comments with all of our members, whether they were project specific. So we need our members to respond for us. I know MTA, bless their soul, they did quite a bit of, they answered 30 or so comments for us. And we posted all of the comments, responses on our website yesterday. But I just wanted to share, there is a lot of support for transit and bike ped in the region. And folks are very appreciative of the work you're doing, and they want to see more.
Great to hear. Thank you, Regina.
Yeah,
I think
thanks
that's
for the
all of our
encouragement.
DNC updates.
Yeah, thanks for the encouragement on that, Regina. Thank you, everybody, for your updates.
Hey, Charlene, I actually have a question for you. Is the wayfinding for the PRG one of the UPWP projects, and when would we be taking that off?
So that's the next one that we're working on getting out.
Okay.
So, yep, we're presenting that to just an outline to technical committee at the August technical committee meeting, and then we'll proceed with getting the RFP ready to get out. So we are hoping to have that out ready soon. Just with how things take a while to get the consultant proposals and things, it wouldn't probably launch, I would think, till maybe early next year, late this year, but that's where we're looking at with timeline with that.
All right, great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any other business or questions for the group today? Not hearing anything. Sounds like we are ready to adjourn our meeting. Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, September 20th. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I will be here online for that meeting. And with that, I thank everybody for your time. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you in September. If you have any questions or ideas for future meetings, please reach out to Charlene or myself. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. It's nice to see everyone. Take care. Nate,
Patrick.
are you going to bike party? Okay. I'll hit you up.